Hi, welcome back to my channel. Sorry for the long delay, but today we are finally going to analyse my recent novella I have written called The Life That Never Was. Obviously this video will contain spoilers, so if you haven't already, go read it for free. The link will be in my bio. Equally, the audiobook version will be coming out soon, so make sure to have a listen to that as well. I would like to thank the 5-year-old who has just made this title sequence. Now, unless you're watching a Christopher Nolan film, it's probably best to start at the beginning of all of this, starting with what caused me to write it. Although I inspired to be a film director, I've always enjoyed writing and creating stories, and knew I wanted to write stories as well as creating them using cameras. I originally intended Life That Never Was to be a film, and I still hope I can make it into a film at some point in the future. Knowing it'd be a while before I'd be able to see it on the big screen, I decided to turn it into a written story first. I started writing it as a short story entry for a competition, as I was hoping to use the prize money, if I won, to go on a school trip to Los Angeles. In the end, the story didn't really fit the requirements of the competition, and coronavirus came along and freed up my schedule. I then wrote it as a proper novella. When creating this story, I was inspired by story concepts from The Truman Show and Inception. With The Truman Show, Jim Carrey is living a life he firmly believes is real, but it turns out that this is a fake world constructed by a reality show for the world to see.
In case I don't see ya. Good afternoon, good evening, and good night.
With Inception, the idea of entering a dream world and feeling like you're alive in this world was fascinating to me, and I wanted to include it in my story.
I'm discovering it.
Genuine inspiration, right?
With this story and future stuff I'm working on, I like to include some names which have some kind of meaning or reference to something else. Bill Fees is an example of nominative determinism. I know, how fancy that sounds. This is the theory that a person's name influences what they do with their lives. So Bill as in dollar bill, and fees as if somebody's paying something to carry out a service. This is fitting for Bill as he is a businessman who loves money, and the name is fairly fitting. Rachel is a random name, Simon is a random name, and Bill and Rachel's child is called James Ernest Fees. Both names relate to people in my family who fought in the World Wars. Ernest was my great-great-uncle and fought in the Pacific region during World War II before being captured and forced to work on the Burma Railway, where he later died. There is an old film called The Bridge Over the River Kwai which showcases what life was like in the concentration camps there. Although the film is fictional and the events of the film are not true. James is Ernest's father, so my great-great-great-granddad, and fought for the British Navy in World War I before becoming a police officer after the war. I chose those names to pay homage to all of those who have fought and are fighting for our country, and to also link it to my family. Also, the initials of James Ernest Fees spells Jeff, so make of that what you will.
My name is Jeff.
The Lawrence restaurant is the middle name of the friend I just can't seem to shake off me after all this time, Magnus. The Rumba Clubhouse is named after the Rumba Rapids at Thorpe Park. I went there once with some geezers. I'm talking about you, Ben, John and Will. And the Rapids became a place where we ended up having some deep conversations. Finally, the reference to veganism throughout is a nod to the local vegan I know and good friend, Pelham. And the intern being described as having hair like a bird's nest is a reference to another very good friend, Callum. I'm beginning to feel like this has sounded like an Adam Sandler film with all his friends in it. I was asked about the meaning of the character names, so hopefully that answers that question. Italy here, I'm quarter Irish, so I thought this would be an interesting element to briefly mention in my story. I always imagined folk music as being this jovial experience, and it almost takes you away from reality. I noticed this when watching Titanic, and they're all playing this folk music in the lower decks, and even though we know the boat will sink and that they will all sadly die, Apologies for the spoiler if you haven't seen it. Forget about that when they're all dancing merrily. I included this to allow Bill to be removed from the performance he constantly puts on and to just be himself for once. I was inspired to put this aspect into the story after listening to Nancy Mulligan by Ed Sheeran. It's a song about how his Irish grandmother met his granddad, and it reflected the simpler time, even though a lot of horrific things were happening there. In a similar way, Bill and Rachel are happy together no matter how dire the situation is in reality, being the slight problem that she isn't real. The marriage proposal in Iceland was put in there because I think Iceland looks nice and I want to see the Northern Lights. So, if any of you want to take me there, then please pop up. Nudge, nudge, wink, wink. Fun fact! I was asked a question about who I would cast if this was to be made into a film one day. When writing it, I did in fact have some people in mind. I imagined Richard Madden, who played John Reed in Rocket Man, Robb Stark in Game of Thrones, and the Prince in the live action of Cinderella, playing Bill. I imagined Jenna Coleman, who played Clara in Doctor Who, and Connie in Captain America the First Avenger, playing Rachel. And finally, I envisioned Simon Pegg from the Cornetto trilogy, Shaun of the Dead, Hot Fuzz, and The World's End, as well as the later Mission Impossible films as Benji, playing Simon. When planning those actors, I didn't realise that Jenna Coleman and Richard Madden had previously dated, nor did I realise that Simon Pegg was 16 years older than them both. Ignoring that, if any of you three did want to star in this movie, please have your agents get in touch with me. Cheers. The reference to the expensive house and Lamborghini and all that kind of stuff would be the kind of stuff I would love if I had the money for it. A pool and a massive home cinema would be lovely. I guess Bill is a reminder to myself to not be a douche if I ever earn that kind of money. A few people pointed out to me that this story should have more dialogue rather than just being a bit at the end. This was done deliberately, though I fear it was a stupidly complicated idea which nobody really saw. Entirely my fault. The point of the dialogue being only at the end was to show the first time that Bill was in reality. At the beginning of the novella, his ego was removed from society and therefore he wasn't in touch with his reality. Once he gets hit by the truck, he is in a coma, so obviously he is in this made up world, and when he wakes up from that coma, he finally is in reality. Saying it out loud, I realise why nobody got it. The sky was a murderous red and black blend, as if it had been stabbed. Imagine if I base a front cover, an entire aesthetic of this novella, on a single throwaway line in the story. Funny, huh?
What we do here is go back.
Some people were slightly upset about the way I ended this story, and I'm sorry to hear that, but I'm equally not that bothered by it, so tough I guess. I didn't want this story to end beautifully, as otherwise the story loses meaning, and throughout my long time on this planet, I've seen a lot of films and TV programmes and other things where the creators include a load of things which make no sense to the plot, but they wanted to put them in anyway, so they pass it off as a dream, such as when a character dies and then it turns out it was just a dream. In my opinion, I think this is lazy writing, and I wanted to do the opposite of this expectation, whereby it was all a dream, and because of that, there were in fact consequences. If you didn't like that, again, I'm sorry, but tough luck. I asked on Instagram if anyone had any questions, and a few of them I've already answered throughout this, but here are the rest. So who is your favourite character? I think for me Simon is a really interesting character that had a lot of potential if I had chosen to develop him further. Would I consider continuing this story? Probably not. I don't want to milk it. That's why I've only promoted it for 3 months after it was released, created an analysis video for it, and I'm in the process of creating an audiobook version of it. you know, I don't want to milk it. I want to move on to different projects now and take me into different directions. And that is the end of the analysis. Hopefully you enjoyed, and make sure you leave a like and go subscribe if you haven't already. Cheers and goodbye.